Okay, so I thought it would be helpful for me to talk a little bit about the four articles that you read, but I want to put it within the context, really, the broader context of literature about change. As you can see in the cartoon here, right, schools are notoriously resistant to change. When you think, for example, as Nick will be talking about, the enormous changes that technology had brought, and yet, we're in uh, rooms in brick buildings with an agricultural calendar from 8 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, divided into classes. My point is this, that I think change is crucial for schools and change is very difficult. Okay, now we really enjoyed reading your SWOT analyses, the initial SWOT analyses, and of course you will get getting back to each of you individually with that. And what I'd like you to reflect on, and again, using your own school as a laboratory, uh, when we talked about the strengths and weaknesses, the opportunities and threats, how do you enact the opportunities that you articulated within your school, and how do you overcome the threats? Well, however you do that and whatever they are, it will entail change. Thus, that's why this course is called Strategic Planning and Change. So let's look at some literature about change. I want to start off with the Wallace Foundation. Now, the Wallace Foundation has been around for quite a while, and they do extensive work related to school leadership. And I recommend that you kind of take a look at the wallacefoundation.org to look at much of their materials, which are very good. I wanted to start off with this Leading Change Handbook and go over it with you. And again, you can read it yourself. But to think about it in particular in regard to the SWOT analyses that you did. How could you, in your own setting, institute change? And how do you think about how to begin, who the actors are, what is necessary for productive change, and of course, school improvement is the whole point, really. So look at the readiness of the leaders, and I want you to put yourselves in this place. And these are the questions to ask. And again, you can download this and you can, do the math yourself. I'm not going to have you do that necessarily now. But have you led change before? Have you been successful or unsuccessful? The technical content area of the change strategy, probably assessment, curriculum, pedagogy, instruction, and this notion of being able to unfreeze participants' previously negative experiences with change and motivate them to a leap of faith now. Be helpful. Now, in various dioceses, there have been change initiatives. Compared to your colleagues in public schools, right, who have, I think, by and large, deal with mandates from on high more than Catholic schools, but nonetheless, what has the experience of change been within your particular school, and can you unfreeze those negative experiences? Do you have expertise in the content required by change strategy? Well, you will by the end of the course. Confidence in the expertise of others. Are you skillful at leading change? Are you aware of what you do not know and candid about it? Are you willing to learn together with the participants when skills and knowledge are just emerging? Are you an active listener? Paraphrasing as a technique, right? Let me tell you what I heard, and uh, and then waiting 9 seconds for response after asking a question. So these are some techniques of communication. Do you have competing priorities that might demand your attention and detract from your leadership of the change strategy? Are you reluctant to label a group as low readiness, or reluctant to put a lot of structure into your planning and implementation processes? Do you believe that you should always treat everyone equally as colleagues regardless of their readiness to participate in the change strategy? The metaphor that's often used, right? When you have change going and you have resistance, either people are going to get on the train or they aren't. And if they don't get on the train, well, I mean, if you can't take action because of union constrictions or because of compassion, or sometimes very good people, but who just find it very difficult to do things differently, they can't prevent and obstruct. Do you consult people whose views may differ from your own defensiveness? And are you open to the resulting plan being different from your original conception, provided that the non-negotiables are there? So what are the non-negotiables in the change? And if you really engage other people in the change process, it will not simply be to arrive at the conclusions that you have already drawn. And of course, if you've had experience of being in a planning process and you come to know that the planning process is really a smokescreen because the people in leadership plan to do whatever they want to do anyway, you know what that feels like. So that's an important consideration. Do you and participants have the same definitions and language for the problem to be solved? Are you comfortable taking risks, learning from mistakes? How well do you know the values of participants and of the organization and how they may differ from your own? The whole question of flexibility, and then modeling that you want to see, model behavior that you want to see as norms, such as adhering to ground rules. Now, these are all very helpful. So, a summary. How about the readiness of participants? So here you were talking about your readiness, now the readiness of participants. The history of participants undergoing change. In any organization, in this one, successful or unsuccessful, what is the baggage that they carry? If participants' experience has been negative, are they willing to take a leap of faith now? Crucial question, right? Do they have expertise? So in other words, if you really want to transform a school to make it excellent, you need to have highly qualified teachers, not only highly qualified in their subject areas, but in a faith-based school, also highly qualified in their pastoral skills and their knowledge of the faith, and their commitment to the faith and their spiritual depth. Is there formal training in the technical content required by a change strategy? What resources are available to help people get the skills that they need to participate in this change? Are they aware of what they do not know? Are they candid about it, or are they defensive? Are they willing to learn together? Are they passionate about solving this problem? Improving the knowledge. Are they passionate about every kid learning? So tapping into their passion. How do they volunteer? That's a measure of their enthusiasm. Do they feel blamed and complain that they are being asked to change? So look over these things. Do people come in early or stay until the job is done, even if it is past the end of the official day? I know certainly from my work over 30 years with people in teacher preparation, one of the things that young teachers notice, how dedicated are people beyond watching the clock? Do participants have the same definitions and language as you do? Has the assumption been tested? Are they comfortable with risk-taking? Are they comfortable being able to make mistakes and learn from them? Do they value listening to each other? Are they comfortable with ambiguity, and do they value flexibility? So to think about, just as you do, right? When you think about leadership, you also think about followership, right? So participation's total readiness. And the organization's readiness, so leaders, participants in the organization. Has the organization successfully undergone change? In the same content areas, proposed strategy. Again, you can read this yourself. I won't read it all for you. If the organization experience has been negative, does it value risk-taking? Are there processes in place by which organization members critically reflect on their experience with their programs? What kind of learning taking place, research and data, assessment of individual skills, a vehicle for learning together? Is there a culture of trying to assign blame when things go wrong, or a value for being reflective and learning from mistakes? Is there in your school a shared value for flexibility? Is ambiguity seen as opportunity or problem? Is there a culture of mutual respect, listening to each other? Is there a strong work ethic? Are there rituals and ceremonies to celebrate success? For change, are the terms understood? Assumptions been tested? Norms of behavior? Is there a shared belief that this change strategy can help solve the problem? So, I think that's helpful, and I'd like you to think about your own school. I want you to think about yourself. I want you to think about, if you're a teacher, your colleagues on the faculty, if you're an administrator, those on your staff, and to think about the organization. Is the organization, are the participants, and are you ready to do what needs to be done to make your institution the best possible institution for the sake, right, for the sake of the next generation, of their education, of their educational opportunities, of their education and faith. Okay, so let's look at some of the theoreticians who look at change. Lippitt, Watson, and Wesley, for example, talk about you have to diagnose the problem, assess motivation capacity for change, assess the resources of the change agent and motivation of changing yourself, the change agent's commitment to change, power, and stamina. Choose progressive change objects. In this step, action plans are developed and strategies are established. The role of change agents should be selected and clearly understood. Expectations are clear, right? So, are you the cheerleader, the facilitator, or the expert? Maintaining the change through communication, feedback, and group coordination. And gradually terminate from the helping relationship. The change agent should gradually withdraw from the role over time when the change becomes part of the organizational culture. And again, you can think about schools, right? Lippitt, Watson, and Wesley are talking about organizations in general. So again, apply it to your own context. John Kotter, very well known organizational theorist, has 8 steps to successful change. First, you need to establish a sense of urgency. We need to do things better. And as you'll see in the article that I wrote about change, right, the resistance to change, if people don't think there's a problem. Create a guiding coalition, develop a clear shared vision, communicate that vision. Think about the skills that are needed to do that. Huh? Empower people to act on the vision. Create short-term wins early on so that people don't feel like they are trying to push this enormous boulder up a very steep hill. Create some short-term wins. Consolidate and build on the gains, and then institutionalize the change. Lewin, again, Kurt Lewin, very well known, and he has some practical steps for change. To unfreeze, to change, and to refreeze. To unfreeze. So think about your school. Think about the SWOT analyses, right? So determine what needs to change. Ensure there is strong support from upper management, be it the trustees, or be it the archdiocese, or be it in whatever your particular setting. Help people understand the need for change and manage and understand their doubts and concerns. So, in some ways what they're saying here, we're frozen into a way of doing things. We're frozen into a way of thinking about things. So first you have to unfreeze. In the change phase, you have to communicate often, dispel rumors, empower action, and always involve all the stakeholders in the process. So it'd be important to take a moment to reflect really on your school and to think of the stakeholders. I mean, the obvious ones, right? You know, the central office, the superintendent, but, you know, parents, board members, in some cases, parishioners, pastors, donors, right? So involve all those people in the change process and then refreeze. To anchor the changes into a new culture of a school, develop ways to sustain the change, provide support and training, and celebrate success. So let's look at some of the theoreticians. And again, you know, you read this, right? The genre of Seashore is personal reflection on someone who's been in this work for a long, long time. And she gives insights into the development of the field of educational change, looking at the role of leaders, the agency of teachers, and the use of knowledge as crucial and essential features. I think it's so important, and you'll see really the way I chose the other readings too. The second one is especially important, the agency of teachers. So often teachers are overlooked, especially in the public sector. Teachers are overlooked as important agents of change. And that's evident, and if you'd like, I'd be happy to share with you some of the federal data about teacher satisfaction. And often teachers in Catholic schools feel that they do have more agency than teachers in large public districts. So when you think about change, right, I think her 6 questions are something really to think about. And again, what I'm trying to do is have you reflect on your previous assignment, right? To think about your institution. What is the purpose of improvement? How does the school organize to change? How does the school create internal and external support? What is the source and role of different leaders in initiating and sustaining transformational and continuous change? Who carries it out and is involved centrally in the change process? And how do differing school cultures impact a school's ability to create change, to make use of autonomous and anomalous changes in positive ways? I think it's especially important for that 6th question, if you have been in different school environments, to think about differing school cultures and how would you identify those differences. So Lukács and Galluzzo, again, continue with the notion of the centrality of teachers in any change process within schools. They talk about the ever-changing context of schooling, and you know, if you hearken back to the SWOT analyses that I did of Catholic schools more broadly, I mean, change, you know, and I've written this in a number of places and said it in a number of places, you know, it is either innovate or perish. And like it or not, that's the era we live in. The question, again, of the centrality of teachers in school change and improvement. Is the teacher a recipient or an initiator? The importance that they mention of recognizing and enhancing specific areas of expertise. You know, you could have the best principal in the world, brilliant, knowledgeable, caring, thoughtful, visionary. Unless you have a highly qualified staff, you will not be able to transform the culture of a school into what is required. So you have to have teachers then who can read the school environment, who are thoughtful, and understand that environment. And I think, you know, interesting too, people who've come from a different context, you know, one of the characteristics of teachers, for example, who spent a good deal of time in public schools. How do they read the school environment? And in my experience, sometimes they kind of read their own public school experience into a Catholic school. So that ability to be perceptive to culture and environment. To create structures that enable colleagues to participate in generating solutions so it is not top down. You know, do the teachers possess the skills to address the problems? And so that whole notion of ongoing professional development, and that has to be a crucial part of any change within schools. And do they feel a sense of ownership? Or do they feel alienated? Do they feel like cogs in a machine? And how to capitalize on the skills and energy of teacher change agents. So, so much of the work, I think, of a school leader is to enable others to be able to be those change agents. Michael Fullen and Pinchot, they write in the ASCD. Now, the ASCD is the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development. It is a wonderful organization. I highly recommend that you go to their website if you don't know about what they do. They have over 12,000 members. And so, in any event. So they do a case study of Heritage Elementary. How to get started, and I like this, going slow to go fast. You can't, how can I put it? Hearkening back to some of the theoreticians we just looked at, right? Unfreezing takes time. You don't unfreeze in a moment. And that if you try to go too fast, of course, what will happen is the defensiveness, resistance, all those stumbling blocks to improvement. So they talk about 6 strategies. First, that seem to work well in this Heritage Elementary. And again, you know, it's a public district school, so kind of apply it to your own context. Multiple teacher teams, and again, the professional development specified to the needs. So, for example, if you are to undergo, to really change in your own setting, what kind of professional development is necessary? And it's probably not one size fits all, right? A school-wide behavioral plan, of course, the whole purpose of this is for students and improve student learning and all the various outcomes, of course, that we have in faith-based schools beyond beyond academic achievement. The importance of instructional rounds, of visibility, of being in classrooms, the use of technology and how technology has really changed things. And again, I think it'll be helpful when you hear what Nick has to say about how technology has changed, how it will change, and the importance of high visibility of the leader. You know, his 8 features, are there 8 features I think are important to consider. So, the principal is the lead learner. Principal is learner, not necessarily as sage who has all the answers. A focused urgency about reducing inequity. Well, that's within, of course, the particular school that is being discussed, this heritage school, which is probably, which is not the real name of the school. But what are the urgent needs? So it could be obviously reducing inequity. That's important for any kind of school. It could be a higher academic achievement, more professionalism, but it could also be an urgency about faith development, and especially given the decline of Catholicism. Some of what when I talked about the threats, right, the decline of Catholicism and religion in general. Use the group to change the group. How do you convince established groups that to transform themselves? And again, that takes a high level of interpersonal success and skills. It takes a high level to be of a compelling vision, and the need to improve while acknowledging the success and the goodness of people. It's that continuous improvement. Yeah, if any of you are aware of any kind of Ignatian language, right? We call it the magis, right? That you always go for the more, right? You don't become complacent with what is, but you try to move. And that comes from a faith commitment, really, a mission commitment. Spread and deepen teacher learning. Your communication has to involve all the staff. You look at pedagogy and student progress and measure that. So how do you have evidence in light of what you want, what you feel urgent about needing to improve, and to go outside to get better insight? I think the importance of, for example, your own development in this course, how you learn from one another, from your own experience. And not only to learn from other practitioners, but again, you know, why am I having you look at these kind of theories about change? We could spend a whole course, right, looking at theories of change, and we can't. But at least to give you that sense of getting beyond your own experience to as rich as your own experience is, but to be able to benefit from the experience of other people. So Anderson, and again, theory and practice mutually enhancing. So to look at the perspective there on transformational leadership, and that's something that I'm sure you're familiar with. For those of you who took the course that I taught last fall, when we looked at those theories of leadership, and I know for others who've taken courses here at Fordham, you have studied these various theories of leadership and transformation being key among them. You've looked at key theoreticians like Bass, right? Who talks about idealized influence, inspirational motivation, individualized consideration, intellectual stimulation, the extent to which, and again, I'm not going to read the article to you, you've read it yourself, but again, to look and to say, okay, how could these things be relevant to and helpful within my own context? Looking at the Leithwood, and I think this is crucial. Preparing employees, preparing teachers to learn new things, building and strengthening new organizational norms, establishing new meaning and ways of thinking. Help leaders break established norms and establish new norms that transform school culture. Not easy. So you have to have a shared vision. You have to meet stakeholders' demands, the array of stakeholders, and I think that's very important. And what are the downsides of transformational leadership? It'd be interesting to discuss that when you engage in some of the discussions online. So is transformational leadership, the theories about transformation, is that the best answer? Well, maybe not, but what are the downsides? And then transposing Anderson's work to your own setting, as I've said throughout this little lecture. Okay, so implementing these changes won't be easy. We're pretty set in doing things the wrong way. Change is hard. We know that from our personal lives. We know it from our professional lives. We know it from various studies that have been done in all kinds of organizational contexts, schools in particular. We know it certainly in the Catholic community, how difficult change can be in a religious tradition that so values, and rightly so, that so values historical continuity. But that's the vocation to lead is the vocation to articulate a vision, to see a better way of being, and to galvanize and encourage and foster people to participate in a transformation of the organization for the sake of the children, for the sake of the church, for the sake of the world.